I'm really excited to introduce a podcast we had with lawyer Teresa McAdams from Yorkville. She is a terrific criminal defense lawyer and family lawyer in Yorkville and handles cases in Kendall County primarily, but will handle it in other counties as well. Really good story about Teresa, who grew up in Chicago. Ended up being a prosecuting attorney in Kane County for a number of years before she decided to go out in private practice, and she's been in private practice for a number of years and just distinguished herself as being a person that's a leader in the community in Kendall County in Yorkville. Really, because we have the Underdog Podcast, we like to focus on some cases where the odds were stacked against the lawyer and how they kind of maneuvered their way to get justice for their clients. And there's some really great stories that she tells about clients she's represented over the years and, how she's made a huge difference in the lives of her clients. So I think you're going to enjoy the podcast with Teresa. Well, I'm sure we're going to have her back on the show again, just because she's continuing to represent clients and do a great job. And so please consider, when you get in that long car ride, tuning in to the Underdog Podcast and listening to the great, terrific story of Teresa McAdams. Terry McAdams, I've known for a long time, and we just have been working together as, I guess colleagues. She is from Yorkville, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Why don't you tell everybody about your background, where you're from, where you grew up, all that?
Well, I grew up in Chicago on the northwest side of the city in a very tight-knit community. It was, I think, a neighborhood of big families, I think because it was primarily Irish, Italian, and Polish. So everybody knew everybody. It was really a nice way to grow up. Even throughout high school, I didn't know anybody who did drugs or even smoked pot. I mean, we were a very sheltered group. Mm-hmm. Most of my friends had parents that were nurses, firemen, policemen. It was your middle class all the way through. So it was a nice way to grow up. I ended up going to high school at Mother Guerin High School, which is a Catholic all-girls school in Chicago. And I really enjoyed, I think, it was nice being in an all-girls school, and guys would never understand this, but as girls, there's a lot of prep that happens before you walk out the door.
Right.
But when you go to an all-girls school, you pick your uniform up off the floor, you throw it on, you throw your hair in a bun, there's no makeup whatsoever, and then you just go to school and you don't worry about how you look and you're not distracted by anything.
How big a school was it back then?
Not very big. I think I had 100 girls in my graduating class.
So 400 or so in the whole school?
Yeah.
And mine was 280. So I went to a Catholic school too, and about 280 kids, and it was co-ed. But and then I think the northwest side is still like that. Firemen, police officers. It's that's kind of an enclave where a lot of them live, right? Still,
it is. There used to be a requirement that you live within the city limits if
right.
you were a policeman or a fireman,
yeah.
And so they all seem to cluster in certain neighborhoods, and that was one of our neighborhoods.
Right, and then so you, your folks, what do they do for a living?
My dad was a Chicago policeman, and my mom was a high school teacher.
Oh wow! And so, did you have siblings at all?
Yes, I was the youngest of four. I have two older brothers and an older sister.
Oh, lovely. And so, when you got out of high school, what did you want to do?
I already knew I wanted to be a lawyer.
How the heck did you know that?
Well, do you remember Career Day where people from different careers would come?
Yeah.
We had a lawyer come to our high school, and she talked about how she, as a lawyer, fights for people who can't fight for themselves. And I loved the idea of that. And I was always arguing with my parents and arguing with my teachers. And I thought that might really be a perfect fit for me.
That's great.
And so I always thought that was where I would end up. And so that was my first exposure. I didn't know any lawyers. She was the first lawyer I ever met. And
so did you, when you went to undergrad, did you go right out of high school or did you take some time off?
I went right out of high school. I started at St. Norbert College, and I picked that school. I think I mentioned before it's a very nice school, but I picked the school because I wanted a place where there were good classes, but there'd be a good social life.
Sure.
I know people like you who went to Notre Dame had no social life. I was looking for something different.
Yeah.
I thought, I can kind of crack down and be more serious once I go to law school. But in undergrad, I wanted to have some fun.
Good. And then you ended up graduating from Elmhurst?
Yes. I worked full time and went to school full time at night.
Oh, wow.
So I worked for Allstate when Allstate used to be in Northbrook.
Right.
And they had tuition reimbursement. So that seemed like the smart way to go.
That's nice. Did you have a communications degree out of there?
Yes.
Okay. So then, but you knew you wanted to go to law school.
Yeah. So I thought the communications degree would help because you had to work on speeches and writing and things like that. So
that's good. And then, so did you go right directly into law school then?
I did.
Wow. Where'd you go?
NIU. That's where the poor people went. And I didn't come from a family with any money. So I think it was $12,000 a year to go there when I went.
Nice.
Now I know it's a lot more expensive now, but that was back in 1994 when I started law school. So it was economical.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Pat Cummings, who is our stud hotshot lawyer here at Shannon Law Group, went to Northern Illinois. So I think he's 37. I think he's probably the best 37-year-old lawyer in the city. So Northern seems pretty good to me.
Yeah. I mean, they have put out a lot of good lawyers. So
yeah. And then, so you got out. What did you do after you got out of law school?
I started at the Kane County State's Attorney's Office, and I was a prosecutor for about 3.5 years.
Okay. So you represented the man for 3.5 years. So
the government.
The government, yes. So are you one of those people that would say, on behalf of the people, is Terry McAdams?
That would be that's what I would have said back then.
Yeah. Okay. And so when you were a prosecutor, I mean, it's got to be pretty intimidating when you first start your job, isn't it?
You know, I think when you're young, you're kind of reckless and you don't even know to be scared. It's almost like when you see 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds on skis in Colorado.
Right.
They just do it because they have no fear. And I think I was 27 and I just wanted to get at it. And so when you start as a prosecutor, you don't get any training. They just literally throw you into the deep end of the pool. They give you a stack of files. These are set for trial today. Go do it. And I loved it. So that's kind of how I began.
Did you law clerk before you went to the King County State's Attorney's Office?
I did.
Where'd you law clerk at?
At the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office. And so I was there for 2 years. And my third year, the way it really worked was I would go to a traffic misdemeanor courtroom and I would offer to do that prosecutor's no-shows at the end of their call.
Oh, okay.
And in exchange, if they would let me do one of their trials that afternoon.
Okay.
And so it was a bartering system. They all hated doing their no-shows at the end. And so I would try to find the most generous prosecutor I could find and then do their no-shows.
Do you remember your first trial?
I think it was a retail theft.
Oh, really? Did you put the guy in jail?
No, I think I think that you're sentenced right after trial, and I think the person got like a fine and supervision.
Okay. Did they have to give the money back or the whatever?
I think that they intercepted them, so there wasn't even restitution. And it's funny because at that time I didn't even know what restitution was.
Right.
You know, I was just doing this trial for the first time and having to question the worker who saw the person put it in their pocket and walk out of the store with it.
Right.
So
you know, one of the things that I often think about with prosecutors is not necessarily the trench people like you. It's more the people that make the decisions on the bigger cases, whether to indict somebody or I don't know if I'm using the right words, to charge somebody. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the way it works is not the way people realize.
Well, tell us the inside story.
Okay. All right, I'll give it to you.
We're going to, so by the way, we're going to give you some inside scoop on criminal defense because the queen of Yorkville is right here. She's ready. Kendall County. She's here. She is a criminal defense lawyer. She's going to tell us about the inside of the system, how it really works, and how you need somebody on your side that between you and the law, you and the government. You need that person's going to fight for you. That's why I brought you in today. I want to know the inside baseball. I want to know this stuff. So I'm all ears, and so are the listeners.
Okay. Well, the state's attorney's office doesn't trust police officers to make these type of charging decisions. So what they do is if a police officer is doing an investigation and they have something that they think should be charged as a felony, the police officer has to call felony hotline, and then that prosecutor listens to what the officer has and lets them know, yes, okay, go ahead and charge it, and this is what I want the charges to be. And then many times, prosecutor who has that job many times is a new prosecutor. So they don't necessarily know what they're doing. And so after the case is charged, the felony prosecutor looks at the charges. And when they take it to grand jury, sometimes they add some charges if they feel like it wasn't charged appropriately. But that's how it's initiated, at least in Kane and Kendall counties.
All right. So is that called felony review?
It is.
Okay.
Or felony hotline.
So I know enough to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I make mistakes, let me know. So I want you to speak to me like I'm a 2-year-old because, sometimes, as trial lawyers, I've always said to the folks that try cases is to make sure that you don't assume the person knows anything about anything. And so these young, just out of school prosecutors that are on felony review, they're charging people, are telling the cops to charge a person. And then it ends up that the felony prosecutor who's been there for a while, right, to get a felony chair, how long usually they have to be there?
Really depends on the prosecutor's office and how much turnover they have.
Right.
So once a felony prosecutor leaves, that opens a spot. So somebody who's in traffic misdemeanor normally moves up. And generally it's on seniority, but if you have somebody who's a superstar and somebody who's not really ready, there is a little bit of politics in every state's attorney's office.
That's amazing to me. Really?
I know. I'm sure you'd be shocked to hear this.
Well, it's an elected position, right?
It is.
Okay. So the felony prosecutor, the one that's been there for, 5 years maybe?
Oh, less than that.
Like
maybe
2 years?
Sometimes 2-3 years.
Wow.
You can get into at least doing like low-level felonies, class 4s and class 3s.
What are those?
Usually it'd be like a retail theft that's over a misdemeanor amount, or a small amount of drugs, or an aggravated battery, to like a battery that takes place in a public place, or if you were to hit a police officer or a pregnant woman, or...
Okay. And those are called low-level felonies?
Right.
Okay, so then you got somebody that's maybe 30 years old, 29 years old, 28 years old. That's the felony prosecutor.
Generally, yes.
Okay, all right. So they take a look at it. Do they ever decide we should have never charged this case?
Yes. And when I have those cases and I get hired on them, I mean, it's really like a dream for a defense attorney. So person comes in, they're charged with a felony. I look at the discovery, and then I'm negotiating with the state, and they generally will reduce it to a misdemeanor. And so I look like a superstar when it just was overcharged in the first place.
Right.
And the prosecutor doesn't want to take it to trial. They just want to get rid of it because they know it's not a great case.
Okay. Now, most of the cases that you handle as a criminal defense lawyer, are those cases tried to a jury or to a judge?
The majority are to a judge. It really depends. A lot of clients are really nervous about telling their story in front of 12 people. My strategy is usually this. If I think I have a good, solid case and it should be a not guilty, but there's technical things that I think it might be hard for a jury to follow, then I want a bench trial. If I know the state can meet the elements and I'm probably not going to win it in front of a judge, I mean, I'm 50-50 on a jury, so I'll just set it for a jury.
Right, yeah. And you can always change your mind, right?
Yeah, you can waive jury on the day of the trial.
Right. So what do you think about people saying, hey, I don't need a lawyer. I'm just going to go and try and represent myself. I think it's going to work. It's going to be a great strategy for me.
Well, I think it depends on what it is.
Okay.
If it's a speeding ticket and you've never had a speeding ticket, you're probably going to have to do driving school if you don't have a lawyer. If you go in with an attorney, you're going to get supervision, a fine, and no driving school.
Okay.
So it kind of depends on, some people have that pride of I want to do something myself. If I was charged with something that would remain on my record, I would get an attorney.
Okay.
So that would be like a domestic battery you can't get court supervision for, an obstruction of justice, anything that I thought would prevent me from getting a job in the future, I would get a lawyer.
That's a really smart move. If they did get a lawyer and they have those, what could you do for them?
A lot of times, take it to trial. I would want to do a trial on my own. If I were charged with a crime and I weren't a lawyer, and
even if you were a lawyer, you wouldn't do it on, you represent yourself, would you?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Fortunately, I've never had to decide that.
Yeah,
but
that hey,
but-
you heard it here today.
Yeah.
Well, I did it one time. No. So if it's something that is going to affect your ability to earn a living, get a lawyer.
Absolutely.
Right.
For example, if you had a DUI or two and you need to go to the Secretary of State for a hearing to get your driver's license back, your driver's license is too valuable to go to the Secretary of State by yourself.
Right.
You're treated completely different when you're there with an attorney versus when you're there on your own.
Why is that?
I just think there's a different level of respect in front of the hearing officer. The hearing officers are all attorneys, and people go in there unprepared. And then once they're denied, it's hard to get a yes after they've denied you once. It's like running uphill. So I try to explain this to people. Like, I understand it's a lot of money, but you're probably not going to get your license for an additional year when you go down with an attorney after you mess it up yourself. So just get an attorney from the start.
Yeah.
And cut your losses and just do it the right way.
For sure. And if I'm in Kendall County, so by the way, I get calls for Kendall County for criminal defense, I'm calling Terry because, she's been doing this for how many years?
Since 1997.
Okay.
So we
almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
So 30 years experience in the courtrooms in Kendall County. Do you practice anywhere else?
Kane County.
In Kane County. So
and
that's St. Charles? St. Charles?
St. Charles.
So St. Charles, Yorkville, or Ottawa?
Ottawa.
Right. So so you're like Lincoln, riding the circuit, right? There you go. You get a horse?
I don't, but they're all very pleasant places to practice.
Right.
And I find if I go east, there's just a stress level I just don't want to deal with anymore.
Right. Well, the thing is, if you know the people that are the players, the state's attorneys, the judges, it's a pretty clubby atmosphere, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, so, it's like growing up in the neighborhood you grew up in. You knew, hey, this block is these people, their mom's like this, their dad's like this, et cetera. You know where they're from, all that, right?
Right. Absolutely. And I think when out of county attorneys come, I think the judges are polite with them, but I think the judges secretly love to stick it to them.
Yeah.
And so they'll be polite about it, but they're going to be more difficult with an out of county attorney.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's just natural. I mean, to me, I've tried cases all over the place, different states, different counties, et cetera. And I've never, had a feeling that I was getting homed anywhere, but that wasn't the point. The point was the comfort level. And I'm always thinking about the client too. I want the client to get the best representation. So sometimes I'll get a local person to be with me and just kind of be my Sherpa, to lead me up the mountain, right? So You're a pretty good Sherpa out there, right?
Well, I don't know about that, but I have
clients.
had attorneys call me and ask me to co-counsel cases though, because they felt uncomfortable in Kendall County.
Yeah.
And so I'll cover cases for them and do things on their cases to help them along because I'm there all the time.
Yeah. And you'll do this likewise. If you have a case down in Chicago or somewhere else, will you have them cover for you?
Well, I don't take any cases in Chicago.
Okay.
I took one murder case in Chicago and it was a horrible experience for me.
Really?
And so I decided, my client got a great result, but along the way, the judge hated me and he loved to stick it to me. And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to stick with the county that I know.
I like it. That's a good move. All right. So the girl grew up in Chicago. She ends up in the west suburbs and you end up working for your state's attorney. And then when did you decide to say, hey, listen, I'm going to move on from there?
While I was a prosecutor, I had to work at Crate and Barrel Outlet at night because I didn't make enough money to pay all my expenses. I think my first salary was $32,500 a year.
Uh-huh.
And I was broke and I was tired of being broke. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to go into private practice. I can't afford to do this anymore. And so
what'd you do at Crate and Barrel?
Oh, just retail stuff, selling plates and
Wow.
platters and the things over there. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was enough.
Some defendant walks through and says, "That's the lady that put me."
What's funny is I didn't see many in Crate and Barrel,
Right?
but I didn't like to eat out anywhere in Kane County because you would see people in restaurants who would recognize you, and I didn't want them touching my food.
That makes sense. Yeah, I get it. Wow.
But now that I'm a defense attorney, I can eat anywhere.
So then you decided, hey, I'm gonna go make some money.
Yeah, I decided I didn't go to law school to suffer like this.
Right. Okay.
And so
then you got a lot of experience working at the state attorney's office, though, do we?
Yeah, you're doing trials every week.
Yeah.
So it's a great place to start. And I would tell any young lawyer, if you can start at a state attorney's office, get some trial experience before you go out into the world.
Right.
You can do pretrial motions. You learn to do anything on the fly. You read your file and you just walk in and you do your motions because you've researched everything
right
at that point.
Okay. And so did you work for somebody for a while?
I did initially. I worked for Bruce Self, who's an attorney in Aurora.
How long?
About 3 years.
Okay, then that's not interesting to me at all. Where did you decide to do your own thing?
Then I decided I'm going to hang a shingle and start my own practice.
Okay, this is where it gets good.
Yeah, that's when the fun started.
Okay, so you decided American dream, my own business. Your mom and dad are beaming. They're saying, our youngest daughter is opening up her own practice. Exciting stuff. You do that in Yorkville?
I did it in Aurora.
Aurora.
So my first office was in Aurora. And what was great is when I worked for Bruce Self, he had a murder case that he wasn't paying much attention to. It just sat on his floor. And so I asked him, hey, can I take that file home? Can I take a look at that? And I really dove into it. And I did a bunch of pretrial motions. I did the research for him. I told him, you need to file these things. And I kept asking him, can I do this trial with you? Can I do this trial with you? And he kept telling me, no. Then the morning of the trial, he called me at 5 a.m. and said, I changed my mind. Do you want to do that murder trial with me? And I was like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. So that client and I formed a bond, which sounds strange, but I feel like when you represent a criminal defendant, they should be a part of their defense. And so I went over to the jail and I talked to him and asked a lot of questions to try to figure out, how do I cross these different witnesses? What do you know about these people? They know way more about their own case than you do. The police reports only tell part of the story. If you want the full story, you got to talk to your client. So after that trial was over, he started referring a lot of Latin Kings to me. And that's how my practice started to grow. And so I had a few successes with a few Latin Kings in the Aurora area. And then suddenly they were just sending me a lot of business.
Wow. So then you were doing criminal defense and were they mainly misdemeanors, felonies?
There was a mix.
Yeah.
There was a mix. They charge a lot more misdemeanors than they do felonies.
Okay.
And then to find people charged with felonies who actually can afford a private attorney, that number dwindles to a smaller number. But surprisingly, gang members have money.
Wow.
So
you were representing gang members and doing that, and tell us, how you felt about that mentally. You were going from being the enforcer of the law to somebody that was making the Constitution breathe by giving these people rights and give them the right to the presumption of innocence, give them the right to, presumed innocence, all these types of things. How did you square that mentally?
It's weird, but they're just people. And if you like people, which I do, when you talk to them, you realize they want to belong. They usually come from broken families, or they have parents who work all the time and they're unsupervised, and they glom onto a group of kids in the neighborhood. And it's almost like once they get pulled into that, it's hard for their parents to pull them out. So in the Aurora area, there are a lot of gang members. And
really?
Yeah, Aurora and Elgin both have their numbers are pretty high.
Huh.
I think the police have done a good job in getting those numbers down, but back in the 90s and the early 2000s, there were a lot of gang shootings, which was great business for defense attorneys. So when I started talking with people who were in gangs, I actually liked them. They're usually pretty entertaining to talk to. Mm-hmm. And I would ask them questions about more than just their case. Tell me about your family. What do you like to do? What are your plans for the future? And some of these people, nobody had ever asked them that question. it was, why'd you drop out of high school? Tell me a little bit about that. So if you continue on like this, where do you think you're going to go? And their answers would really surprise you. And you'd be surprised how many police officers actually like a lot of the gang members. And they really get to know them because they know their whole family. And there's a lot of police officers that really try to mentor these kids. And I kind of felt like I was mentoring them as well.
I think I told you before, I'm number 9 of 10 kids. I think my dad maxed out at 18 grand a year. And we ran out of money in the 15th of the month every month. I remember the 15th kept rolling around because I remember my brother, Patrick, who's now a doctor, had to go down to the supermarket and deal with, some checks that weren't insufficient funds and all. It was just so embarrassing. Anyway, so, but I was, I guess, not the most obedient kid. In my grade school and high school, I pulled a couple of pranks that were really dumb. I'm sure they're arrestable for sure. But I remember, so I was kind of in the last group of people that were, at least nowadays, that were taught by nuns. Okay, so did you have any nuns at Mother Guerin?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I had them in grade school too.
What grade school did you go to?
St. Tekla.
St. Tekla. Well, who's St. Tekla? Do you know who's St. I don't even know who that is.
I don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
Isn't that
How do
funny?
you spell it?
Thecla.
Really?
And
Is that an Indian name?
I don't believe so.
Tekla.
I think,
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah.
You got me stumped on that.
yeah, that I didn't know who St. Tekla was. And I'm sure I heard the story at some point growing up, but
Yeah.
she was a martyr of some sort, I'm sure.
Right.
And sadly, they've closed the school.
Yeah. So these nuns, so I did a bunch of kind of bad stuff. Like I remember one time I even threw my pen at a teacher, in 6th grade. And I'm like, look back, what are you doing? I can't imagine any of my kids doing this stuff. Anyway, so these nuns, I was incorrigible because I would get, and they're allowed, them to, give you what they call hacks or paddle you, whatever back then. That was it. And I would get hacked and I would do it again, etc. But what the nuns were saying over and over again to me, and I wrote an article on this when we used to have a newsletter, is, hey, I'm in charge of you. And I know who my boss is. It's God. God's my boss. And my job is to never, ever give up on you. And he never did. And it was like, I'm getting that feeling from you with your clients is I'm here to be that person for you. And I'm not going to give up on you. And kind of get them because the whole thing was with us, and we were all, the little enclave that I grew up in, Yakima, Washington, we had, I think we had 10 kids in our family. And we were one of like 50 or 60 families that had that many kids, right? None of us were like rich or anything like that. We just, whatever. And that group of people, those nuns, I'll never forget, they were Dominicans. I went back for I think it was the 100th anniversary of the school. And they were all retired then. And I just told them, I said, you made such a big difference in my life. How you had me think about that nobody's ever going to give up on me. I had a future. When I hear that story about you talking to these young men and women that you represented, that, hey, you're a child of God too, just like anybody else. And you're a human and you're created by God. You're not a gang member to me. You're a person.
Yeah. I mean, you start to not think of them as that. I guess everybody has a reason for doing what they do. And so I was always interested in the reason. Even people who've shot people or killed people. I always want to know the backstory because it's usually not just something that randomly happens. So I enjoyed it, I have to say. And I've said to a lot of my young clients, it's funny. I'm asking you these questions not to lecture you because it's not good for business. The more crimes you commit, the more money I make. So I'm not your mom and I'm not going to yell at you for the things you do. I'm just wondering why you're doing it. Are you on a self-destructive path? Was this accidental, intentional? So let's think a few steps ahead. Where do you think you're going to go with this? And what do you want from me? I mean, I can win this case. We can talk about this case or talk about other cases, but ultimately you should start thinking about your plan because you're at a point where you could go right or go left. And if you keep going the path you're going to go, you're going to be dead or in prison.
Wow.
So what do you want to do?
So let's talk about what we talk about in this, the underdogs here.
Okay.
So I'm sure you've got a couple stories that are notable with as far as, whether it was a trial, whether it was some other way, but fill me in. Give me a story that I'm ready for a happy ending here. Give me one, or somewhat of a happy ending.
The most memorable case for me that I've ever had was a gang member named Dante Torres. And he was about 18 years old. He was surprisingly intelligent and likable. And he was in the Kane County Jail. He had the public defender, and his best friend came and hired me for the case. And his best friend told me that his friend had been charged with attempt murder and that he knew his friend was innocent because he was, in fact, the person who shot at the two people who were shot on the porch.
Hold on a second. Okay.
So basically, the person who committed the crime hired me to defend his friend. And he said, I don't know why my friend was arrested for this. I'm shocked that they arrested him, but it's a mistake. And he knows I did it. I know I did it. I feel like this is something really bad is going to happen here. Can you help him? And so I said that I would. And the hardest kind of cases you can have as a defense attorney are when your client is innocent.
Yeah, this is the reason why I'm in civil law, where I'm arguing about money, because if somebody's going to go to jail because of me, you got a lot more guts than I do as far as that goes. So you're representing somebody that you know was innocent.
I had no doubt he was innocent because I had talked to the person who had done it. So we start preparing the case. And so basically the story is this. This is what actually happened. And that's what you get when you're a defense attorney that you wouldn't get as a prosecutor. You get both sides of the story. So Dante and his friend see this guy, Sean Ramirez, sitting on a porch, and they want to shoot him. He's an opposing gang member. They don't like him. They have history with him. And so they each have guns, and they're creeping through these backyards trying to get to the house that's in front of where Sean Ramirez is sitting on the porch. And Dante Torres says to his friends, you know what? Something feels off. Something feels wrong here. I don't want to go through with this today. I just have a bad feeling about this. And his friend's like, no, we're not going to get this chance again. No, let's go. And he's like, you know what? No, I'm out. I'm not going to do it. So Dante Torres leaves his friend, turns around, and goes to the end of the block and just waits. His friend continues on, crosses through a yard, creeps up, and surprises Sean Ramirez on the porch and shoots at him, just completely unloads his, 15 rounds. Unfortunately, he was sitting there with an 11-year-old little girl too. Neither one of them were killed. I don't know how. Thankfully, some of these gang members are terrible shots. And I don't know how 15 of them only hit a few. So Dante has a gun on him. And so he gives it to one of the neighborhood kids and says, hey, I think the kid's name was Adrian, will you hide this gun for me in your dog's cage? And so the neighborhood kid hides the gun, and then the police show up. And then that kid promptly tells the police, Dante Torres' nickname was Fat Man. Oh, I hid a gun for Fat Man over in the dog's cage. And so the police communicate amongst themselves the way they do. And they see Dante a block away, and he's thinking he's safe because he wasn't a part of that shooting. And they scoop him right up.
Right.
And then they get the gun out of the dog cage. And when they test it for gunshot residue, there's no gunshot residue on his clothing, his hands, or even his gun. And at this point, they don't even realize that that gun doesn't match the cartridges that were spent at the scene. So I'm thinking this is a great case for the defense.
From watching all the TV shows, it sounds like Dante's in the clear.
Well, hold up. So the state gave notice that they were going to call a gang expert. And I don't know, do you know what a gang expert is?
I have no idea.
So a gang expert is an expert that comes in and tells the jury about a particular gang. And they'll say that this is how the gang is formed, and you have to shoot or kill somebody to get into the gang, and they have to commit crimes in furtherance of the gang, and they have to give money to the gang or generate money for the gang. And they basically paint a picture that your client is dangerous and shouldn't be released. And it doesn't matter what he's charged with, lock him up. So it's very prejudicial. But I knew that I wasn't going to be able to keep the gang expert out because this was a gang motivated shooting. You know, it was one person shooting a gang member who belonged to like an opposing gang. So he decided he decided, I don't want a jury, let's go bench. And his judge was a former prosecutor who went straight from being a prosecutor to being a judge. And I think it's hard for some judges to put on a different hat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the case here because I thought the case should be directed out on a directed finding.
Right.
And when
no residue,
there's
it didn't match the cartridges. Well,
right.
How could it be? And what was the charge?
Attempted murder, 2 counts, and 2 counts of aggravated battery with a weapon.
Okay. And so what's the sentence if you get convicted for that?
31 years for each charge. So it would have been a minimum of 62 years in prison.
So if somebody gets 62 years in state, does that mean they get 1 day for good behavior and they're out 30?
It's at 85%.
Oh.
For murder and attempt murder.
So that sounds like 40 plus years in jail.
I didn't calculate it, but a little bit more than that. I think
Wow.
you take 15% off.
Oh, so 50 something. Oh my gosh.
So it's basically,
it's
a life sentence.
Okay, so.
And that's if the judge gave him the minimum. The
All
judge
right.
doesn't have to give him the minimum.
Could have given more because there's an 11-year-old kid.
Right.
Right. Okay, so he gets charged. How long between that time and then the trial, how long a period is that you have to prepare for trial?
Well, the trial took place in 2013, and it was a 2009 case.
Oh, so 4 years.
So it took almost 4 years.
Wow.
I didn't represent him right from the beginning.
Okay.
I think it took his friend a while to come up with the funds.
Okay.
I didn't take the case for free. I don't remember what I charged, but.
Okay. So you got the case. You find out the guy's innocent. And.
Well, then
so
I have to tell you what happens next.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Because when you're charged with a crime, you're already the underdog.
No, I get it.
I have to tell you that. But when you're a gang member, you're African American, and you're poor, you're even more the underdog because you don't have the family and funds to hire experts and really, put on the case. If you didn't, if you're a millionaire, you'd have a team of attorneys, and that's what the state has. They have unlimited investigators. They have the state police. They've got experts. They've got as many lawyers looking at a case as they have. So you are the underdog. But the only eyewitness they had was another 11-year-old kid who didn't see his face, who said, I saw a person dressed like Fat Man who walked like Fat Man. And I thought that was so, I got the kid to admit, I never did see his face. And the street is so dark. And you should know that gang members dress alike. They do. And having met the shooter, I knew that they were built the same. They were about both slender build, both about 5'9", 5'10". I could see where somebody could confuse one for the other. So it was very difficult to know information that I couldn't share. So when the judge said that he was guilty, I thought I was going to quit the practice of law. I was so devastated. I'll never forget it. It was probably one of the worst days of my life.
Wow.
And I thought, but the prosecutor and I were friends, and I kept saying, it was a guy who just retired named Greg Sams. And I said, Greg, I know it's hard to convince you, but I'm telling you, he's not the shooter. Like, this is the worst result. And he kept saying, what can I do? I can't do anything. We presented the evidence. He's been found guilty. I really can't do anything for you. And I'm very persistent, and I kept nagging him. Well, the friend who hired me was talking with a confidential informant who was wearing a wire. And he admitted to this person after the trial that he did the shooting. And the informant asked a series of questions, and he knew all the details about the shooting. And he knew enough to corroborate what the police knew. And so on the day of the sentencing hearing, Greg came up to me at the courthouse and told me, you were right. He wasn't the shooter, and we're going to reverse the convictions, which I have to tell you is almost unheard of. Like, these things do not happen. It's almost out of a movie. And so, normally you'd have to go through years in an appeal process. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And if the number of people who win an appeal is so small, I mean, it does happen for some people, but I just didn't know. I mean, the judge had said she had based it on credibility, and those are really hard to reverse.
Right.
So that was one of the most memorable, and I took it as straight up luck, because sometimes I do get lucky, like crazy lucky. And so I thought, okay, well, this is never happens to anybody until this next case, because I got to tell you another one.
Hold on. I want to hear
Okay.
it. So you're I mean, the drama's there. So you're there. You're ready for sentencing. And is he held in jail during the time between the trial to sentencing?
Yes. He had been in jail the entire time.
How long is that?
Almost 4 years. For a crime he didn't commit.
All right. So he's in jail for 4 years. The sentencing comes, and then the prosecutor comes to tell you just in the courtroom?
He met me in the hallway, and it was 10 a.m. and he was going to be sentenced at 1 in the afternoon.
Okay. So you met, and so I want to talk about the conversation with Torres.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let's hear. I want to hear that.
Well, what I did is I said, I have to go. Well, first he wanted to go talk to the judge. He's like, you know what? We should let the judge know what's going to go on for this afternoon.
So you guys both went.
We both went to talk to the judge. Now I'm thinking, if I'm a judge that I found somebody guilty, I'd be asking some questions like, what new evidence happened? Like, I would have questions. So we go into her chambers, and Greg says, Judge, we'd like to talk to you about Dante Torres. And she says, who is Dante Torres? She can't even remember. And she's going to sentence him basically to life in the afternoon. And I have to tell you, it took a lot of self-control. I stood there and I didn't say a word.
Because you were gonna win. That's why you just when you don't
exactly.
Right,
That's exactly what. But not only that, I wanted to say something to her about.
Yeah, I get it.
That
wouldn't have got you nowhere.
It wouldn't have got me anywhere. And but I'm telling you, like I had to go breathe into a bag. I was so mad. I just thought,
right.
How could you not care? How could you not care?
Right.
Here's this young man who you were about to ruin his life. She couldn't have cared less. She didn't care.
So then
she's retired, thank God.
Okay, so all right. So when did you tell Dante?
Oh, I went right from there over to the jail, and he hugged me. He was.
Did he get out that day?
He didn't, because the prosecutor would agree to vacate the convictions if he would agree to plead to a lesser charge, so they could hold the other things over his head, because they didn't want him to come in and testify that he was the shooter. Oh. So I had to explain to him, they want you to plead guilty. You're going to get the equivalent of a 10-year sentence.
Time served.
Pretty close to time served. And he didn't care. He took it. He just said, and I don't even know why, and I'd said, just dismiss the case. Let's be done here. And he's like, no, because I really don't want a double jeopardy issue.
Okay.
I don't want him to think he can come in now and save his friend.
Okay. And so he had to have a deal where he had to come in and say, I wasn't the shooter?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. He didn't testify against his friend. And I think their case was kind of weak against the friend, because all their witnesses had identified Dante. So I think they gave him some type of sweetheart deal too in the end.
Right.
But
you didn't care. Your guy was out.
I didn't care.
Did he get in trouble again?
Sadly, yes. And I'll tell you, I was in the Kane County Jail seeing a different client, and I did a double take, because during that case, he would go to the law library and he would read cases, and he would ask me questions, and they were good questions. He was smart. And when he was, in jail, I wrote him a letter once saying, I want to know what your plans are when you get out. Yeah. If you need help getting a job, contact me. I'll help you.
Teresa.
Well, I mean, it's like
your Sister Teresa.
Well,
that's your nickname's coming. Sister Teresa so far.
You don't feel that way about every client, but you do have some clients that, if they were raised in a different family, there'd be a different result.
I get it. Yeah.
And he had so much potential.
Yeah.
But he got caught selling drugs. So I was seeing a different client, and I saw him playing cards in the day room, and I turned around and I was like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And he just hung his head and was like, I didn't want to call you. I'm so embarrassed. I shouldn't be here. I made a mistake. And I was like, you got a second chance at life.
Right.
You're an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that was a good one.
That was one. Now
that's a real good one. I mean, that's almost like a book one.
I,
I mean, you should write a book on that one. Come on, Teresa.
There's that one.
Let's go. And then,
all right, so
you
I'll
get
have to
another
tell
one?
you.
You get another one?
Every time you do a jury trial, there will always be something that comes up that you didn't expect.
All right, what do you got?
And so, so I'll tell you about Guillermo Ballesteros.
Okay.
That was
Guillermo Ballesteros. Okay.
His nickname is Willie. Don't ask me why. I don't know how you.
Because Guillermo is William.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Willie, yeah.
Well, so now for the first time, since I've known him since 2007,
yeah,
I finally know where the nickname came from.
Willie. Yeah, right.
But,
I have a William. And I think in
that's
high school, he went by Guillermo.
Guillermo, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, Willie was accused of robbing a guy. And here's the story. Here's what happened. Esteban Aguilar is a gang member who lives in Aurora. And he had a friend who, while he was in prison, would send him money and was a good friend to him. His friend was a guy named Michael Garcia. Esteban decides he wants to rob his friend. And so he calls Michael Garcia to come over. And Michael Garcia had a dash cam on his car, which was kind of important for the story later on. So he gets another friend of his, who I learned later was Adrian Betzinger, to rob him. And so in front of the car on tape, they just jump him and attack him.
Wow.
They pull his jewelry off him.
Lion King.
And he gets in his car and drives away. So he knows who Esteban Aguilar is. He doesn't know who the other guy is. And somebody tells him, I know who the other guy is. And he pulls a picture off of Facebook of Willie. And so he goes into the police. And I was actually surprised he reported to the police because after looking into the case, I believe he was actually there to sell them drugs.
Oh.
So I think they jumped him for his drugs, his money, and then the jewelry was like an afterthought. But he wasn't very honest with the police about this, so I can't say for sure. But that's what I think really happened. But anyway, he goes to the police with this picture of Willie and says, this is the guy who jumped me with Esteban Aguilar. And so the police are familiar with him because he's a frequent flyer with the Aurora Police. And so they put together a photo lineup and have him identify him, which I think is crazy because his recollection has already been contaminated. He's been shown a photo saying this is the sole person who did this to you. So what good is a photo lineup at that point? But so he gets charged. And Willie says, I don't know this guy. I didn't rob this guy. And normally I have clients tell me they're innocent when they're not. But I had known him in other cases, and he was always pretty forthcoming with the facts. So I did believe it wasn't him. The interesting thing is Willie is 5'6", and Michael Garcia is about 6 foot. And in the dash cam, you can tell the person who's attacking him is about his same height.
Okay.
So it couldn't have been Willie, because Willie's a midget compared to this guy.
Right.
And so I thought, we have a pretty good case. It's very difficult to do a jury trial when you have a client who has teardrop tattoos and other things tattooed on their face. And when you have facial tattoos, tattoos on your hands, and they're going to see tattoos on your body, it's usually a bench trial.
That's a shocker.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. I always let the client decide, and he decides he wants a bench trial. And so it's before another judge who has more years as a prosecutor than anything. But I'm still thinking this judge is going to give him a fair shot. So the evidence is presented. I had an expert testify about, witness identification and how that can go wrong and why you can't rely on his identification when somebody tells him and shows him a picture and everything. The judge finds him guilty, and I'm angry. I'm so mad. And the reason I'm mad is because when I'm doing my closing argument, he's not listening. The clock is behind him. He's turning around, looking at the clock. He's looking at the gang members that are sitting in the back row who are there to kind of watch the trial. He's not even looking at me. And I'm thinking that's very strange to be doing your closing argument to somebody who won't make eye contact to you. And there's really not much you can do. And so I had a bad feeling, put it that way. Well, he convicts him, and I'm thinking, and I'm not going to be able to convince the prosecutor. The prosecutor thinks he did it. And So I go to the lead investigator who I know and I say, listen, I know he didn't do it. I know it was this Adrian Betzinger because when he hopped, I've learned that they hopped the fence in the back of that yard and Adrian Betzinger lived in that house. So they basically hopped the fence and went to his house. So I said, I'm hearing through the neighborhood that Adrian Betzinger went on Facebook and posted pictures of himself wearing the jewelry and tried to sell the jewelry on Facebook Marketplace. So the investigator did me a solid. He got a grand jury subpoena for this guy's Facebook post, and there it was. Minutes after the robbery, Adrian Betzinger is wearing the jewelry.
Wow.
And so before the sentencing, the state comes up to me and says, we're going to dismiss the charges against Guillermo Ballesteros. And I was like, woo! I mean, I was so happy.
Willie
Willie gets a
free Willie.
Free Willie. Willie got freed. And he actually got cut loose that day. So
did he really?
Yeah.
And did Willie stay clean too?
No, he's back in prison. But
well, so Sister Teresa can only do so much, right? I mean, you put these cases on and you give them the option. And they have free will.
Exactly.
Free will and Free Willie.
Exactly. That was
those are pretty good though. That's pretty good though.
Yeah. When you're talking about like years or decades of somebody's life, you don't want to see somebody go to prison when you know, and I understand that maybe Willie had done other things and would go to jail for those things, but you don't want to see him go to jail for something that you know he didn't do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I tortured myself over that too. And then I was going to tell you about another case.
Okay, let's hear another one. I want to hear that. This is good stuff. This is because the personal injury group here, we hear about, some of these really, really sad cases. Hard even to look at the pictures of these people that are hit by these big trucks. And then, these sometimes they're, either brain damaged or in a wheelchair or whatever it is. And it's so sad. My job is to go after these companies like nobody's business, but we don't get the jailhouse stuff. And so we're getting the jailhouse stuff. And so before you get into that story, Irish girl, middle-class suburbs, and you're hanging out in the jail.
Well, for a while there, until bail reform, I knew the COs at the jail. You would go on a regular basis to go see your clients. But now they've changed things and you can't post bail anymore. So most people are out. The state has to file a petition to keep you in.
Right.
And they only do that on the super serious violent cases or non-probationable cases. Or so you don't have to go as much.
Before that, you were hanging out at these jails all the time. I mean, how do you get used to that? Isn't it a little scary?
No, it's actually kind of interesting. They put you in a room that's a glass room and you're in the middle of the pod. And so while you're in there are all these cells facing you and all these people staring at you, watching you meet with your client. So it's great for business because then they know what attorneys go to see their clients and who doesn't.
Well, so I mean,
they take you right into the jail pod.
And so the prisoners are looking at you during these meetings.
Correct.
A lot of people that are listening, there's going to be an intimidation factor of being inside of a jail or a penitentiary or that type of thing. How do you develop that? This is no big deal.
I don't know. Maybe I was nervous the first time I did it. And then after that, I don't know. When it's your own client, they don't have there's no benefit to them. There's no reason that they would hurt you. They need you, so.
I get that, but I mean, what about the other ones?
I don't know. I really have never, I've had people when I'm leaving a meeting with my client stop me in the pod and say, can I ask you a couple questions? Can I, but I've never felt afraid.
Have you been in Statesville?
Yes.
That's scary.
You know what it is? It's dirty.
It's like, so there's been some pretty bad guys in there.
Yeah. I've been to Menard. There's some
a
lot of people.
Wasn't Richard Speck in there? They had some bad guy.
He was in somewhere down in southern Illinois.
Oh, was it?
Because I remember one of the victims' fathers bought the house directly across the street from the gate.
Yeah, and I know. And then Gacy, wasn't he in there?
Yes.
I mean, all these guys. I mean, these are the worst of the worst that are in that place. So you went in there, huh?
Yeah, but they don't let you into the pod.
Okay.
You go into an attorney room
Okay.
and you sit down with your client. I had to interview some witnesses in there, and so they let me go meet with potential witnesses.
Okay. So not only are you a business person, because you got to, run a law firm's a business, right?
Correct.
Right. So you got to, you got to pay people. You got to pay your rent. You got to pay your utility, all that stuff, your bar dues, experts, all that kind of stuff. But then you got to be a kick-ass person in court, right?
Well, it helps.
Well, you're confident, right?
Yeah. But that comes with experience, I think.
Yeah. You've been doing this for a long time. And one of the things that you can tell just by meeting somebody is whether or not they know who they are. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You got that?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So I'll go into a lot of lawyers, and you can tell that immediately if your opponent is, knows who they are, knows how to communicate, knows the law, all that kind of stuff. But you also got to be, as a criminal defense lawyer, you got to know that Constitution pretty well, huh?
Oh, yeah, but really just search and seizure.
Yeah.
That's really the main one.
Yeah.
Is when your clients get stopped in a car or they get a search warrant and search their house.
Right. And so you know that pretty well.
Yeah. Well,
is that the Fourth Amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew that much. So when you are doing this stuff, you're a business person, you're a trial lawyer, you're a counselor, your sister Teresa, you're all these different people. And then you're a mom too, right?
Yes, I have 2 daughters.
Oh, how lovely is that?
Well, some days great.
Any lawyers?
One is a lawyer to be. She's going to start her 2nd year of law school in the fall.
Is she going to come work at your law firm?
Nope.
Wow.
I told her she's got to make a name for herself. And so she's working at a firm in St. Charles.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. So you get any other stories?
Well, I was going to tell you one of the funnest cases I've done.
All right, let's hear the funnest.
This was a jury trial that there wasn't a lot to lose because my client, whose name was Darren Denson, was already serving 50 years for a murder he committed in Milwaukee. And so before he went to Milwaukee and got arrested, he's alleged to have murdered somebody in Elgin, Illinois. And so he got charged after he was charged in Milwaukee. So, so the state decided that they were going to seek the death penalty for Darren Denson. And so that was my first and only death penalty case because now it's been abolished. So Darren Denson was being housed at the Kankakee County Jail. When you have a death penalty case, there's big gaps between the court dates because there's a lot of discovery. There's a lot of pretrial motions. And so they didn't need to keep him there. So they sent him over to Kankakee. When he arrived in Kankakee, they gave him an inmate rule book. And he actually read it to his credit. And when his breakfast tray came, his juice was frozen solid on it. So he took the juice and put it to the side, ate the rest of his breakfast. And not long after that, they did a shakedown of his cell. And the guard found the juice and said, "I'm sending you to segregation because you're hoarding food and you're not allowed to have food in your cell." And so Darren Denson corrected him and said, "I'm sorry, but I read your rule book and you have to give me a written warning and then a verbal warning, then a written warning before you can send me to segregation." And the guards...
Segregation, like solitary confinement?
Correct.
Ooh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it's apparently not very good. And the guard says, "I said get your shit, go get your shit and go." And Darren Denson had been in the Cook County Jail off and on since he was 13. This guy was no stranger to violence. So he says to the CO, that's what they call guards, corrections officers, "You know what?" And you can see him on film. "I'm going to let that go. I'm going to take that as your verbal warning." And so he turns around and starts walking away from the CO. And the CO starts charging up behind him. And he hears him and he turns around and he just beats the life out of this guard. I mean, he gave this guy a beat down. So I'm thinking it's probably not a winnable case, right? But it's a good opportunity to put him on the stand and have him testify in front of a jury and get some practice. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been doing a jury trial and a client will say to me, you know what, I want to testify. And I always say, no, that is not a last minute decision. If you told me before, I don't want to testify and we haven't prepared you, we're not putting you on the stand on the day of.
Right.
So we didn't know if, Darren Denson was very charming. He was likable. He was engaging, entertaining. I thought, he probably would be pretty good on the stand. Like most sociopaths, very likable. And so I thought, this is kind of like a freebie. This is a training session.
Right.
Let's put him on the stand. He does a great job.
Is this in Kankakee County?
This is in Kankakee County.
What town is that? Is it Kankakee?
It is.
Okay.
And wow, I mean, I learned a couple things in that trial. I'll tell you what I learned. It came back as a not guilty.
Wow.
Which shocked me.
But what are they charging with?
Aggravated battery, because hitting a police officer or a correction officer is an enhanced battery.
What's the sentence for that?
I think that's a class 2. So that'd be 3 to 7 years. Yeah. Well, I wasn't really worried about that. He was already serving.
Yeah, 50 years.
Yeah. And plus he had a death penalty case pending. So
wow.
That was really what our focus was
Right.
Let's try to win this death penalty case. So
Right.
let's see if he'd be good on the stand.
Right.
So I know I was telling you before about how you go into the jail and you're in that glass room.
Yeah.
When I represented him, I brought in a fake jury. And I brought in 6 people and we questioned them and we did a trial run and then they gave us their comments.
You did a focus group in a jail?
In the jail.
Is that the first time ever?
I'm not sure, but I'll tell you, my firm got a lot of calls after that.
I bet you did.
Because everybody watched us parade everybody in, sit them down. You get a lot of permissions when it's a death penalty case that you wouldn't get in a regular case. So we figured, you know what? Let's see what they think. And they all thought he was not guilty. I tended to believe that he did it, but I was like, well, let's see what happens here.
Okay, so you got a not guilty in the aggravated battery of the CO, but now we're moving to the murder case.
Right.
Okay, because you're represented on that too.
Right. But I'm just saying, what I was going to tell you is the funny thing about criminal trial work is 20% of the time you get the result you don't expect. 80% of the time it goes as planned or what you think.
Okay.
You're typically going to do it. I would say that the not guilty on that, like I win cases that I shouldn't win,
right.
or I think I shouldn't. I lose cases that I shouldn't lose. The justice system isn't consistent. It's not fair. There's just a lot of defects, I think, in the system.
Okay.
And so if you get charged with a crime, pool your resources and get yourself a best lawyer. Get a team.
Right.
Because, many heads think better than one.
Have you been on teams before?
Yes. I've worked with other attorneys on big cases. And I think I think what it is it's ego. I don't want the other attorneys to think I'm not good. They don't want me to think they're not good. So everybody just works harder.
Okay.
Just to put on the best trial we can.
Like the OJ defense team. Remember those guys?
Exactly.
That was quite a group of guys, wasn't it?
It was. But even the big cases you've done when you've worked with other attorneys that were
right.
Don't you find that your best attorney? You're just
you
better?
up your game for sure. And you divide labor. It's that the way I look at it is there's no downside to the clients.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
Yeah. So then did you try the case, the death penalty case?
We did. And so the first trial, and I'm saying the first trial was great because they were still seeking the death penalty, which means we had no budget. So I had an IT guy come in, help us with our presentations. We had investigators interviewing witnesses. I went with the investigator to see each and every witness. So I knew what to expect because I think you're better at cross if you know what to expect. And the state never took the time to do those things. And so it was 11 not guilty, 1 holdout for guilty. So,
oh my goodness.
Which shocked me. But, the reason, it was interesting because we interviewed the jurors after and so did the state. And I think the jurors talked to them about what they would need to convict. And so the second trial, that time around, they cured some of those problems they had with trial number 1. And then by then they abolished the death penalty.
Okay.
So we didn't have the budget and it wasn't as fun to do
right.
it. We could reuse some of the things that we used, but that if we didn't end up putting him on the stand, I don't think it would have helped. During the first trial, I told him, I'm like, I think this is a not guilty. And if you testify, you shift the burden, whether you realize it or not. Because if somebody's thinking not guilty, but they don't believe you when you're on the stand, you're done. It doesn't matter. They don't even think about the state's evidence.
Right.
It all comes down to what they believe. So you're better off just sitting in a chair.
Right.
So
the second time around, they found him guilty?
The second time around, they found him guilty.
Wow, because they charged him with less, or what did they do?
No, they still had him on the murder. And in Illinois, if you have a prior murder conviction, a second murder conviction is mandatory life.
Oh, boy.
So,
It was life
the
anyway.
conviction was going to be life.
Yeah.
But in that case, they brought in his girlfriends. There was a real issue with identification in that case.
Okay.
And I don't know how they missed the girlfriends before. I talked to the girlfriends and I knew that that's why I believed, he told me all along that he didn't do it. But after talking to the girlfriends, I was pretty convinced that he probably did do it. And the state forgot to subpoena them. They didn't show up for trial. And I knew he got a lucky break there, but
not the second time, though.
Not the second time, no.
So,
but he was never going to be out and free anyway.
Right. So you've practiced. You've had some really. These are landmark decisions here. It's pretty great to walk around knowing that you helped out these innocent folks. What is what are we looking for now? What's the? You're still hungry to represent folks, right?
Yeah. I do family law, and I'm helping people really through the hardest thing that anybody could live through.
Right.
But when you're charged with a crime, that really is the worst thing anybody could face. And especially if it's a case where you're going to prison if you lose. And so I guess what I would like, if somebody were speaking at my funeral and giving a speech, I would like to think that throughout my career, I've made a difference in people's lives and that I've supported them at a time that they really needed the support. And, I'm pretty loyal to my clients, and my clients are generally pretty loyal to me and usually refer me. And if by chance a client that I've become close with hires another attorney after they've had me as an attorney, they are dead to me. I will never, I know it sounds funny and petty, but I have said to a couple people, like, I don't know why you're calling me, but lose my number because I will never represent you again.
Wow.
But it's not about the money for me. It's like, if you're part of the McAdams and Sartori family, hey, I'll go to bat for you. I'll fight for you. But the minute you get, twitchy and you decide you want to see what another attorney's like, I hope you like him as much as you like me, because we're done here. We're done here. Yeah.
And, I can just tell that you enjoy what you're doing. As far as, I know most of what we do isn't like TV.
No.
There's a lot of preparation time. There's a lot of reading. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of, all the stuff behind the scenes.
There's a lot of strategy.
Yes. Yeah. And then figuring out just the right time to do X. Right.
Right.
And so, I'm so happy that you stopped by because, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to talk to you again, because, we don't get the kind of, crazy stories about these, prison, focus groups and all this type of stuff, and, getting people off life sentences and all these types of things in the civil group. But it's so nice to meet a lawyer that really believes, in getting their clients justice and family and all that type of stuff. So thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And so if you're in Yorkville or Ottawa or St. Charles and you're up against the government, and you need an enforcer on your side, somebody, the Michael Jordan of criminal defense lawyers, you got to call Terry McAdams, because she's got the background. She's got the experience, the toughness. I'll call you Mother Teresa. Okay. Is that okay? Sister Teresa, Mother Teresa. She'll go into that jail. She's not afraid. She's not afraid to take on the government. She's not afraid to take on the judges. She's ready to handle your case. So thank you, Terry, for coming in.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.